Okay, so for my project, I wanted to integrate technology and I wanted to bring the real world to my students. So I teach Spanish and I have always wanted to use ePals, but I was scared to use it because of the time differences and then not knowing if the person I was be working with would contact me. So it was a struggle at first, but we're going places now. And so what I did is that I wanted to focus on my SLOs, and so that was, sorry, let me minimize this. I wanted to focus on students will be able to demonstrate an accurate understanding of speaking, listening, reading, and writing skills in the target language. Students will articulate differences and similarities between target language cultures and cultures in the US, and then students will integrate target language proficiency, intercultural competencies, and critical thinking. And lastly, the main focus was to integrate technology to communicate, collaborate, and perform tasks effectively. And so why should teachers use technology? That was the main reason why I wanted to work on this project, how to integrate it. And the first thing, technology provides teachers with more tools to support our students. And then students become actively participants in their learning process by using technology. And also teachers who become experts at using technology in the classroom can advance in their career. And I have seen that in the last few months, I've been able to see my students' growth. I've been able to see their growth in learning Spanish a little bit more than my coworker, and I think it's with the help of technology. And so I wanted to use a lot of technology in my classroom, and I actually incorporated all of these: Duolingo, Edpuzzle, Flip, Tumblr, ePals, YouTube, and then Google Suites. So for Duolingo is a game style language learning tool. And what I've been doing is that I was able to align Duolingo to my class lessons and their units. So my students were able to practice activities that were related to our class. So for example, at the beginning of the school year, we were using ser to describe ourselves. And so Duolingo had a unit with ser, and students were able to practice using the verb ser. I also use Edpuzzle, and I know that for students learning a new language is challenging, and sometimes the way that I teach it might not be the way that my students best understand a new language. So I try to include Edpuzzles where other teachers are teaching it probably a different way than I'm teaching it, and also activities that include where it's speaking in Spanish so my students can practice listening Spanish, and I kind of use it as a quiz at times. Those Edpuzzles, it helps them kind of see a different perspective from a different teacher. And then my main thing was using ePals. I wanted my students to be able to have someone to write with. And so I use ePals, and I also I have a native Spanish speaking class. I want to say maybe 18 of them are Mexicans. Then I have Puerto Rican, Salvadorian, and Hondureño. And then I have one Nicaraguan. So seeing different cultures in one class, I wanted my other students to experience that. And so my students were able to communicate with students from Spain with ePals. And I wanted to connect my students to outside of what they're used to here in Spanish. And we use Tumblr. I wanted Tumblr to be a page where my students could blog, but it kind of became more of a feedback for me. My students were able to tell me what they liked, disliked about the project. They were able to tell me how they felt with their ePals, and of course, several of them didn't like that they had to wait for their ePals to send an email back. So that was something that I also had to be patient with. Flip, I love using Flip. So Flip is an app where students can record their videos and then they can edit their videos. And so I like that my students were able to edit their videos while working on Flip. Um, And then YouTube, I usually put YouTube songs. I put songs on for my students, and eventually my students have memorized those songs, and those songs help my students memorize some vocabulary words. So that's why I like using YouTube. And then the last two that I used was Google Docs and Google Slides. And the best part about these two is that my students are able to collaborate, they're able to edit each other's work. And then I'm able to see what they're writing. And I use a website, can't remember what it's called, but I'm able to see what all my students are using. It's a website that our district purchased, and I'm able to see where my students are struggling, and I can just open their Google Slide page or Google Docs, and I can also message them through their comments. And so those are the tools that I started using this semester. The majority of these Google Docs, Google Slides, YouTube, and Duolingo I was used to using, but the other ones I started using. So it was nice having to incorporate new technology into the classroom. So why I implemented this technology, the first one was because it's gamified learning. So students are able to learn through video games, kind of like assignments. So this would be Duolingo. With Duolingo, students were trying to be the top 5 and the leaderboard. And so students are able to learn and they want to continue being the top 5. So that helped. And then I wanted to integrate to social media. Um, because that prepares them for future and also prepares them to search for any answers and make their own decisions independently. So if there was something that they weren't sure how to write or related to culture, they were able to integrate social media to understand more about the culture. So one thing that they learned this semester was Dia de los Muertos, and a lot of my students didn't know what Dia de los Muertos was. Several of them thought that it was Mexican Halloween. So just like, showing them where they can see more about Dia de los Muertos and how there is celebrated around the world. It was nice seeing that their perspective of what they thought it was changed. And also gather students' feedback, and that Tumblr was the one that helped me understand what students liked and disliked about the project. And lastly, video and multimedia lessons and presentations. I use Flipgrid for my students to record their letters. So I didn't just want them to learn how to write, but I wanted them to learn how to speak Spanish. And all the letters that they wrote, they had to record it on Flipgrid. And what I liked about it is that my students felt more confident. If I were to ask them, "Hola, ¿cómo estás?" they could answer it and kind of keep going with the conversation, and the way that they were speaking Spanish sounded more fluent and they felt more confident about it. And so I focused on these 3 things with my project. I wanted to focus on the interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational aspect. So for interpersonal, I wanted them to be able to negotiate meaning and exchange information in a rehearsed and unrehearsed situation in a variety of contexts using a mixture of words, phrases, and some simple sentences. And with Google Docs, and they were able to do this. They were able to prepare a email, and then they were able to work with each other to edit each other's work. Interpretive, this was the back and forth with their emails. They were able to comprehend sentences and information from culturally authentic resources within highly contextualized situations and sources. And then in the presentational, when they were able to present information using a mixture of words and phrases and some simple sentences. So I tried to keep everything in the novice level, but towards the end, right now, I feel like my students have advanced a lot faster than I had expected. And so I am glad about that. I think this project helped a lot. And so what I gather is that from throughout this project, this is what I was able to see, that their reading, writing, and presentational skills improved compared to last year. And I've been teaching for 4 years, but compared to the last 4 years, this group of students have improved a lot faster. encourages perspective and perspective taking, learning about different cultures and learning it from another individual has made them see the world differently. I have seen that my students see the Hispanic culture differently, and they kind of want to embrace it now. They usually ask me, where do you buy this? Where can I go to celebrate this? And it's questions that I wasn't asked previously as often as I am now. And then it definitely promotes patience. This project has done that. Just waiting for e-pals and just waiting for them to they wanted to reply to the e-pals, but I needed to teach a unit before they emailed them, and it was just a lot of patience. They kept asking, when are we gonna email them? When are we getting an email? So patience is something that I think my students and I actually got to learn from this. It supports and develops social skills. Their social skills have changed, and due to COVID, a lot of my students were very timid, and I know that right now the class talks to each other. They're all friends, and it's something that I hadn't experienced also in the last few years. But their social skills have changed, and then in the Hispanic community, where we tend to be really polite, and instead of saying, for example, what, we say Monday, and which means it's a more of a formal way of saying what. And now my students, instead of saying what, they tell each other Monday. So their social skills have been changing, and they're being a lot more polite. And then also is curiosity development. They're more interested in learning about the culture, trying to celebrate activities. I have a wall outside of my classroom where I usually post everything that they have created, and usually my students are constantly asking, when are we gonna do this? When are we gonna change the poster? They're wanting to do more so I can post it outside of my classroom. And so the outcomes is that with this activity and integrating technology, I think with integrating technology, providing more engagement, it's preparing my students for the future. I think their communication skills are getting a lot better, and I think that will prepare them for when they're actually getting in the work field. It connects better with students. My students are able to communicate, and what I noticed is that they were learning more from each other than I think that they were learning from me. When I would ask them to edit each other's Google Docs, they were able to communicate, and they were being polite instead of being mean about how they should write. Just the way that they were speaking, it has been quite different. Then it was collaborations. Now they kind of want to do everything together, and they like to help each other. And if there's a student that doesn't like to help, most of the students will say, and we switch partners, and then I'll work with that student one-on-one and help them out, and then they can, once they understand what they're doing, they go back into the group and collaborate. And then I think overall, all of this technology has been supporting my students, and so I think technology has helped them learn Spanish a lot faster than what I thought it was going to be. And so these are the credits. I used Google Slides Go to create this. I wanted to give credit to this. But yeah, that's my project.
Great job. Any comments from your classmates?
I have one or two. So I wrote this down, which is why I'm like looking down. But I think ePals is a great way to take a tech tool and make it fun for them, and also make it really specific and relevant. I think it's funny that the kids got frustrated that they had to wait. Kids now don't understand like the good old days of, mailing and having to wait. So that was kind of cute. I loved your tools description page, and I love the way that you highlighted what the tool was if we didn't know, and then really explained in depth how you implemented that tool. I also loved the visual aspect of the implement technology slide, because I think it tied back and gave us a reminder of how well you were effectively managing your SLOs.
Thank you.
I also like how you explained, because we used a lot of the same tools. There's a lot of Google-based tools, and I liked how you explained how you used it in secondary versus how I use it in elementary. So it gave me a different perspective. I appreciated that.
Thank you.
So what are you going to take with you after completing this project? Are there any processes or lessons that you will take with you?
I think just like my students' patience. Um, I was always wanting them to get their letters back with e-pals, but the time differences and then also holidays are very different. And I think that's what I'm gonna be taking. And also time management. I had a few students that didn't have e-pals just because in Spain the classes are a lot smaller. So my class is the average is about 28 students. And in Spain, the maths is 22 maths. And so the teacher that I was working with only had 20 students. So I had a few students that didn't have an EPAL. So I did have to connect those other students with my native speaking class. That way they can still communicate with someone in Spanish. And so definitely time management. That way I can plan ahead of what students need to have a different EPAL without it's not technology based. And so for those students, I did ask my students if they wanted to volunteer to not have an EPAL from Spain. And so those students that have an EPAL in my other classroom are actually going to be meeting them at the end of the semester. And so I plan to do a little breakfast, and they're actually going to meet each other. And I asked them to use nicknames. So they actually don't know each other, or if they're in the same classroom, in a different classroom, they don't know that they're writing to each other. And so the day that I have my breakfast, they're gonna have a name tag with their nickname, and they're actually gonna get to see their e-pal. So I'm excited about that, but definitely time management and patience is what I'm taking from this.
Very good. Very good. Excellent job.
Thank you.